I appreciate those people that have chosen to stand. Good for you. My name is Lisa Gromlich. I'm the Dean of the College of the Environment here at the University of Washington, and it's my great, great pleasure to welcome today the Administrator of the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, Lisa Jackson. Lisa has a number of accolades that have been given to her, and I'm going to just give you a few of those. She was one of Newsweek's most influential people in 2010. She was one of Time Magazine's lists of 100 most influential people in the world in both 2010 and 2011. She's Essence Magazine's 40 Women Who Have Influenced the World. There's a great spread in O Magazine on her work to protect our nation's air, land, and water. And if you haven't seen it, tonight you've got to Google her appearance on Jon Stewart's Daily Show, where I think she showed us all what an administrator can do with a certain amount of talent and panache. One of the things I appreciate about Administrator Jackson is that she comes to work in this area of the environment out of a deep conviction that things need to change. She became interested in environmental matters following the coverage of the Love Canal disaster. And she went after what to do about that by becoming an expert. She has a bachelor's and master's in chemical engineering from Tulane and Princeton, respectively. She holds an honorary doctorate from Florida A&M University and an honorary law degree from Pace Law School. And she spent her early career in EPA's Region 2 New York's office as an engineer. She moved to the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection in 2002 to become the commissioner in 2006. That was brief because she was appointed by President Obama to head the EPA shortly thereafter. So while there, she leads an 18,000-person agency responsible for safeguarding human health and the environment. One of the things that we've already had some wonderful conversations with Administrator Jackson about have been the issues about the environment, green tech, jobs, and particularly what it means to be in an environmental protection agency in an urban environment. I'm sure she'll have more to say on that, and so with this I want to welcome Administrator Lisa Jackson.
I guess I should look up every once in a while when I'm walking out. Wow, thank you for coming. I cannot believe you're here. I know you're busy because you didn't have school for 3 days. I heard all about it. I know you were heartbroken and things were really bad here, but now you're back in school. So thanks for coming out. Thanks to the University of Washington School for the Environment and the Evans School of Public Affairs. Thank you, Dean Gromlich, for the fun we've already had and the fun we're about to have, and for your leadership at this institution and all that it means for our country, not just for these students, which is also very important. I want to thank Sandra Archibald. I know she was here before. She may have had to go, the Dean of the School of Public Affairs. I have to say a special hello to Dennis McLaren. Stand up and say hi to everyone. Dennis is no stranger to folks who've been working in the space of environment and sustainability and renewables at the city and county level, but now he runs our office here in Seattle. Hint, hint, if you need an internship. But he's also, mob him, not me, but he's also, I think, just a wonderful example of the importance of EPA more and more often getting involved at the local level and reaching across jurisdictions to be helpful to folks who are doing wonderful things, and that's all of you. And then I have to say hi to Ted Sturtevant, who is here from still Department of the Ecology, right? Haven't changed your name, love that name. You're like alone in the country with that cool name. So thank you for coming. So I just want to make a few remarks, and then the only thing I asked of the Dean is that we keep it pretty informal, and I don't think that's going to be a problem. First, happy birthday. Happy 150th birthday. I'm really glad to be with you as you mark that important milestone. And let me say how cool and glad I am to be at a school with its very own William D. Ruckelshaus Center. Some of you know William Ruckelshaus as one of the champions for Puget Sound and as a leader on health and environment in this region, certainly in the Northwest. But I know him differently. I know him as the very first head, the very first EPA administrator when the agency was formed in 1970, and someone who came back to EPA in a very tough time in the 80s when the one thing the agency needed was leadership. And it is not an understatement to say that he is the model for every single person who's held the job I now hold. And I can say with complete confidence that the EPA, and indeed the entire modern environmental movement and all that it has become, would not be the same without him. He's been a good friend and inspiration to me personally, and so I'm glad to see his legacy here and his legacy in this institution. Now, I'm coming to you today following President Obama's State of the Union address. Last night, I had the privilege of again sitting at a joint session of Congress as the President spoke about what has been and will continue to be the defining mission of our time in office. That, of course, is strengthening the American economy. He, of course, spoke about the urgent need to continue creating jobs and to increase the pace of job creation as we recover from the recession that began in 2008. But President Obama went above and beyond those 2 points in outlining an economic vision for our country. What the President provided last night, for those of you who just might not have had the chance to see him, was the blueprint for an economy that's built to last. Now, his blueprint is founded on revitalized American manufacturing, a new era of American energy innovation and production, more affordable education, and a fair shot for American workers. And also a renewal of the American values that have made us both a land of opportunity and an economic superpower. The central mission that we have, and his focus as president, is to build or rebuild a country and an economy where everyone gets a fair shot, everyone does their fair share, everyone plays by the same rules. Unfortunately, we have moved away from those fundamental values in the way our economy has worked. For years, economic security for the average American family and the American middle class in particular has been eroding. Long before this current recession, good jobs in manufacturing began to leave our shores. Hard work stopped paying off for too many Americans. Wages stayed relatively flat while the cost of everything, from school to housing to medicine, have gone up. We have come to what the President called last night a make or break moment for the middle class and those trying to reach it. What is at stake is the basic American promise. The promise that if you work hard, you can do well enough to raise a family, own a home, and put a little something away for retirement. Since the day he took office, President Obama has been clear that we need to do more to create jobs and foster economic growth. Under his leadership, and thanks to actions taken by this administration, the economy is indeed growing again. The U.S. has added a total of 3.2 million private sector jobs over the last 22 months. American manufacturing is creating jobs for the first time since the late 1990s, and the American auto industry is coming back, while developing fuel-efficient vehicles that save us all money and cut pollution from our skies. We've also agreed to cut the deficit by more than $2 trillion, and the President signed into law rules that hold Wall Street accountable. Good start. And we have to ensure that we keep moving ahead. What we cannot do is go back to an economy that's based on outsourcing, or bad debt, or phony financial profits. To get us on the right track, last night the President announced 4 planks and pillars to his vision. I want to talk about each of them today because I think they're so important for you as students. The first is American manufacturing. President Obama laid out proposals for how we bring about a new era of American manufacturing, one where our facilities are more efficient than any others in the world, where American companies have incentives to keep jobs here on our shores and make products stamped made in the USA. He also talked about American energy. The President wants to move our nation into a new era for American energy, where our economy is powered by homegrown and alternative energy, sources that will be designed and produced by American workers. This is much more than solar panels or increased use of cleaner natural gas, both certainly important. One good example is our work with the auto industry to make our vehicles in this country much more efficient. Last year, the EPA took part in setting clear national standards for fuel economy in American cars and trucks. That effort will cut our oil consumption by billions of barrels. It will save American auto purchasers and drivers trillions of dollars. It will keep pollution out of our skies and save money. That change, though, sparked innovation in an entire industry sector. The auto industry is booming, from developing components to innovators making advanced batteries. In North Carolina, an advanced battery company called CellGuard recently hired 200 employees and is adding 250 more. They are one of many companies operating in the U.S. that have dramatically increased our global market share for advanced batteries. Another example is the company Alcoa, not exactly a new company, but Alcoa has announced that they'll invest $300 million in an aluminum facility in Davenport, Iowa, to meet anticipated demand for their aluminum, because it's light and durable, from the auto industry. Their investment creates a couple hundred jobs. I saw yet another example, though, this morning at a local company called Energy2. They're working on innovations in energy storage that will have applications in many industries. Some of you might know them. They call themselves a spin-off of the work done right here at this university. They are one of the companies that are creating new products and new opportunities in the energy sector, and one of the reasons why the President believes American energy has to be a pillar of economic growth and an economy built to last. The third pillar is a fair shot for American workers. The President offered new ideas for ensuring that our students and our workers get the education and the training that they need to compete in this new economy. Some of the plans he outlined included connecting our colleges to industries in need of new workers and helping small businesses get up and running. He also proposed extending support for students paying down their student loans and urged companies to reform an immigration system that allows immigrants to come to the United States and get educated and then tells them they can't stay once they're done. Finally, and most importantly, the President called for a return to American values. Values of fairness for all, responsibility from all. It's critical to our success that everyone get a fair shot, that everyone does their fair share, that everyone plays by the same rules. So in all of this, EPA has an important role to fill. Our mission, as I think you all know, day in and day out, is to protect the health of the American people by keeping pollution out of the air that we all breathe, keeping toxins out of the water that we drink, and keeping harmful chemicals out of the lands where we build our homes and our communities. In other words, the work that we do each and every day is ensuring that our economy works for the American people. I think it's consistent with the American values the President spoke about yesterday to say that industry should not be allowed to dump untreated sewage into waters that we use in our home. It's consistent with those values to say that automobiles should meet standards that keep dangerous lead pollution out of the air, and that, as a rule EPA finalized last year said, power plants should have some limit placed on their emissions of mercury, a neurotoxin that affects children's developing brains. It's consistent with those values to say that the food we put on our plate shouldn't be coated with harmful chemicals that threaten our health and the health of our children. As the President said last night, we won't back down from protecting our kids from mercury, or making sure that our food is safe, or making sure that our water is clean. And again, there are two ways we can go. There are two visions dominating the conversations today, and I bet we'll talk about them in the Q&A. One vision says we rely on science, and we rely on the law. We rely on innovation to protect our health, to protect our environment, to grow our economy in a way that's clean and sustainable. The alternative says that we move forward by rolling back standards for clean air and water, It says we have to increase protections for big polluters while reducing the safeguards for the rest of us. You only have to turn on the news on almost any day lately to hear the consistent drumbeat against environmental protections. I'm here to tell you that has real consequences. Last year, Republican leadership in the U.S. House of Representatives orchestrated a total of 191 votes against environmental protection. Many of those votes actually happened in response to myths and misleading information put out about EPA and our work. To give one example, there was an assertion made by lobbying and industry groups that EPA is putting forth a train wreck of regulations that will hobble our economy. Train wreck. That claim has been repeated in news outlets. I've heard it many times. It's been repeated on the floor of Congress. In fact, one of the bills that restricts clean air protections was named the Train Act. The claim is founded on an American Legislative Executive Council report. One problem, the report details regulations that EPA never actually proposed. The fact is we cannot create an economy that is built to last by putting our nation into a race to the bottom, a race for the weakest health protections and the most loopholes in our environmental policies. For those of you born after 1970, it would be the first time in your lives that the health and environmental protections you grew up with and hopefully took for granted are not steadily improved, but deliberately weakened. The result will be, without doubt, more asthma, more respiratory illness, more premature deaths. What won't happen is any clear path to new jobs. No credible economist links our current economic crisis or any crisis that this country has faced to clean air and clean water standards. In fact, our experience is actually just the opposite. Americans have seen 200% growth in GDP over the 41 years of EPA's existence. After all that time and all that growth, it is clear that, as the President said, we can have a clean environment and a growing economy at the same time. The President said we don't have to choose between our environment and our economy. Now, that requires diligence. And President Obama has directed federal agencies to review regulations, eliminate unnecessary burdens for businesses, ensure that the health protections remain, but burdens that are unnecessary do not. I think that's a great idea. But as you can also see, if you heard his speech last night, that is not the beginning and end of a jobs plan. We need proactive measures to insource jobs in our country, aggressive steps to strengthen our manufacturing sector, new ideas to make sure our workers have a fair shot, and strong support for innovations that will move us to American energy. I'm very proud to serve a president who has said that we can't wait on these issues. I'm very proud to serve a president who has come to EPA and said that the health protections that we stand for are vital to the American people, and that the choice between our environment and our economy is indeed a false choice. I'm very proud to serve in an administration that is committed to building our country and our economy to last. As President Obama said, no challenge is more urgent, no debate is more important. We can settle for a country where a shrinking number of people do really well, while most Americans barely get by. But we can build a nation where everyone gets a fair shot, everyone does a fair share, everyone plays by the same rules. Make or break moment for the middle class, he said. We have great opportunities to serve the American people and to serve our future. A strategy to grow our economy by just doing less is a challenge that we all face, and it is not how we meet the needs of the people that we serve. I'm here today because so much of what the President talked about and so much of what is at stake will shape your future. And you have the power to influence the direction we go. It starts with our conversation today, and I hope it will continue as you lend your voices to the important discussion that this country will have in the months to come. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for all this campus means to this region and to the issues of the environment that I have served my whole long career. And I look forward to talking to you some more. Thanks.
Thank you for your formal comments, Administrator Jackson, but now the fun begins.
Yes.
And I've been told that we're tweeting this session live, and so, of course. And in the last 24 hours, we also had an open Facebook page where students brought questions forward. So this is a set of questions, I'm sure in some sensible order, that come from, this first one was posted on the UW Facebook page. And it reads, how will future legislation affect our lifestyles as we seek alternative energy sources from the dams and hydropower?
Well, legislation always affects your lives, right? I mean, what happens in Washington counts, matters. And it's part of my message today to tell you that. It actually pains me a little to have to say it because for the longest, the environment wasn't a particularly political issue. EPA came to be under a Republican president, Richard Nixon. We've gone up and down, but over time, I think it's fair to say that the issues we address have become more political and partisan than less, and I think that's damaging. So the first thing I would say from a legislative standpoint is that, as I said in my talk, those votes to roll back the Clean Air Act or the Clean Water Act matter. Why do they matter? Let's say you're really interested in sustainability and clean energy, and you're way beyond worrying about what the standards are for clean air. Because those standards, you know, smart regulatory policy, smart standard setting, create a market for pollution control technologies and clean energy. The president also said last night that it's not likely, it's probably the understatement of the year, that out of this Congress we're going to see energy and climate legislation. But he also, I hope you heard, committed to doing what we can to continue to create the market for low carbon technologies, for cleaner energy, for more efficient use of energy and water. He'll do that by using, I think he hasn't, I think he's planning an announcement, but by using the purchasing power of the federal government. And he mentioned last night the Department of Defense as a great opportunity to create, to help to keep those markets moving. Somebody's got to hire all of you, and one of the ways is that you'd be working on things that are eventually bought by the Department of Defense, who, by the way, see energy efficiency and sustainability as key strategic assets to their mission, which is defending our country. And so it all comes together. So what I would simply say about, I think the question was about hydropower. Obviously, laws and regulations at the federal, the state, the local level are all important. If there's one thing that the president's clear about, we need to, as much as possible, align standard setting so that we're not creating a maze that makes it hard for entrepreneurs and innovators to get things done while still respecting the need to protect our resources and protect communities. We do a lot of that at EPA as well, but I think it is extremely important that you realize that what might sound like a small rollback, oh, haven't we fixed that problem, can actually undermine our moving forward in much more innovative ways.
Administrator Jackson, I can also attest to the fact that we just left a room of, what was that, about 40 small business and medium-sized business owners from the Northwest, all involved in green sectors of the economy. And a number of them commented on how your agency had worked so closely with them and as they developed their strategies going forward. And it really is an inspiring set of conversations we just had. So here is a question from Jay Hayes off of the Facebook site. Came in after the State of the Union speech. He comments that President Obama talked about the benefits of tapping into our natural gas reserves to lessen our dependency on foreign oil. At the same time, he's pushing an alternative energy agenda. Isn't it true that, given our appetite for natural gas, an increase in the availability of natural gas usage in our country will lessen the opportunities for the adoption of alternative energies?
Yeah, so are they competing or are they complementary?
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's the fundamental question. I believe they're complementary, and I'll tell you why. We as a country have a tremendous appetite for energy. We as a country as someone said to me recently as an environmental advocate, natural gas is here. The challenge is to make sure that it's safely and responsibly developed, and developed in a way that is energy efficient and also sensitive to climate implications. And I think all of those are fair discussions to have. The importance of natural gas in transitioning to other forms of baseload power, or in not replacing it, but augmenting our need to do something now with a series of very old and aging power plants, especially in the Midwest and the southern part of this country, and to think about opportunities there, I think is actually an important bridge for us. You know, we have plants right now. I talk a lot about climate, but I want to talk now about human health. The biggest problem from an air pollution perspective when it comes to human health is fine particles in the air. We also have toxics, mercury, arsenic, cadmium, acid gases in the air that come from burning primarily coal, sometimes a little bit of oil. And we need to do something now because those human health threats are real. They're responsible for 10,000 premature deaths a year, for 130,000 asthma visits to hospitals a year. We've made progress, but we can make, there's progress to be made, especially in urban areas of our country and areas along the eastern seaboard. And so, to me, we would be wrong to look away from the importance of dealing with some of those issues right now. EPA's mercury standards will help us to deal with those issues right now. I think at the same time, at the local level, there's lots and lots of energy around efficiency projects and renewable mandates and strategies that are very complementary, that say, okay, that's great, we know we need baseload power, we know that's going to create jobs, but we are looking forward 20 years to truly renewable energy that is either zero or very, very low emitting. And I think you have to have both. I think in the real world, both will happen. And so what the president was saying, I think with his all of the above, is that he wants to continue to use the natural resource we have in natural gas to help lower our carbon footprint and other pollution footprints, but also recognize that the economy, as it grows around having less carbon polluting energy, then works in sync with local and statewide efforts to continue to move into renewables. So I think you can have both. I think they're complementary if there's smart policymakers at the local and state level as well.
Okay, thank you. I hope you don't have any plans for tonight, because we've got a lot of questions here.
You guys really do not want to sit here all day.
This one comes from the audience, and it reads, what is the role of the EPA in supporting native communities to assess risks to ecosystems and economies from natural resource extraction? They put in parentheses, fisheries, mining activities.
EPA has an important role to play. You know, 2 years ago we moved our tribal affairs work into our Office of International Activities. We've always had an Office of International Activities. You might expect and guess correctly that people love working there. But we changed it to the Office of International and Tribal Affairs. Why? Because as you all know, tribal nations are sovereign. They're special in Alaska, but here, the sovereign nations, the trust responsibility they have through the Department of Interior, but they are also sovereign. Many of our environmental laws, they can have their own laws like a sovereign nation, and we have to help them get there. So I would say, first and foremost, technical and general assistance. We have a general assistance program to fund work on tribal lands. That's to build the capacity to basically be self-determinant about what pollution is okay, what you're willing to permit, what the tribe wants done, how it wants to balance natural resources on its land with resource extraction, if you will, or other opportunities, industrial or other opportunities on their land. The idea is that the tribe has to get to the point where it can make those decisions for itself. So I'm very proud that every year I've been administrator, we've had as a goal to increase funding for the General Assistance Program. We recently worked with the Corporation for Public Service to include AmeriCorps work to go towards technical and general assistance provision. The second is to, I think, help to build capacity for higher level skills. The environment is no longer a matter of going out in waders and taking samples. A lot of the times it's done through very sophisticated monitoring technologies and others. And so we're working very hard with tribal universities, with higher institutions of higher education. We have an eco-ambassador program at those universities that is extremely popular, trying to help build capacity within their citizenry, their citizens, to be able to embrace and lead efforts amongst the tribe as well. And I think last but not least is to then sometimes be in the position, and this is happening in areas as well around the country, to help the tribe sometimes make tough decisions. I mean, we have some cases, I don't know of one, but I have one in my mind in the Southwest where, because of years and years of neglect of dealing with air emissions from power plants, you're talking about a power plant now that was finally going to be used to bring water to tribal agriculture, to work they're having to do. And, you know, for most of us, we don't have to choose between having water and having clean air to breathe, but in many cases, tribes are making tough choices. So we have to also be willing to recognize that our trust responsibility includes looking at the full suite of issues that they may face and trying to help them not have to make those tough choices. So in our regulatory capacity, we do have to make decisions about facilities on tribal land and their permitting, and we have to listen. The President issued an executive order earlier this year on consultation with tribal governments, and they're to be treated in a nation-to-nation fashion. And that makes for tough decision-making. You have wonderful tribes up here, but even here there are some places where those imperatives are stark, and you do have to figure out what comes first. You have to do a little bit of environmental triage, I think is fair to say.
Great. Administrator Jackson, this person has a very short, direct question. National energy policy. Can we get a good long-term narrative? Can we really, underscore, set renewables goals?
Sure.
Short answer.
You know, I love the we in all those questions. I mean, you know, the president talks about American energy. The president spoke last night about, you know, wanting to work with Congress on a renewable energy standard or an energy efficiency standard. We can do things nationally, but we haven't, this Congress does not have a great track record of being able to do big visionary things nationally. So does that mean nothing happens? No, not at all. There are amazing things, important things happening at the state level. There are important things happening at the local level, because it's at the local level. Think about this college campus where energy efficiency is really realized and where the gains are actually monetized. It's you who pay the bills through your tuition and through the institution's public support, primarily tuition, I hear these days. It's you who understand the connection between finding sustainable ways to deal with waste, to recycle more waste, and the businesses that grow up as a result of knowing that there is a need for recycling and now raw materials that can be recycled into something, and an economy that grows around it. So my belief is that we will continue to see, first, the fruits of the Recovery Act investments. Those investments in the Recovery Act, $80+ billion in energy efficiency, in community development block grant type of grants that went to states and local governments, and in renewables, are going to continue to sprout. The problem is that when, as I saw this morning when I went to Energy 2, if there's a challenge, I won't call it a problem, is that you don't often get the really big numbers, because as the president said last night, you're growing innovative, nimble, small businesses. See, you're growing jobs at the 50s at a time, and the hundreds at a time, and then in the auto industry in the hundreds of thousands at a time when you look at what's happening there. But it's not the same story as just saying, as he also said last night, you know, you can grow 600,000 jobs if you safely and responsibly develop natural gas. So we have to make sure that although it's diffuse at the local level, we still keep that energy for renewables and for energy efficiency. And I think the Seattle metropolitan area and this county are doing wonders at exactly that in tough times.
So let's pick up on this theme of jobs. And I'm going to guess pencils are going to come out and people are going to take notes on this one. The question from the audience, from Sarah in the audience, reads, what can University of Washington students do to better compete in the green jobs market?
Well, the green jobs market is actually a lot of things in those three words. You know, what we see over and over again is that, again, green is not low tech anymore, right? We often get accused as environmentalists of, oh, you want to take us back to the days when people walked everywhere and there were no cars. Not at all. We just want really, really light, really, really fuel efficient vehicles, and we want no pollution coming out the tailpipe. Okay, what's wrong with that? And so you're going to need education that's as multidisciplinary and as world-focused as possible. You're in a wonderful institution for that, because this is a world market for green energy and the clean, what some people call green growth and the green economy. And we do a lot of work with developing countries, and we know that in order to really be part of sort of this whole movement, you have to understand not just what's happening here, but what's happening around the world, and be very fluent in that. I also think that, again, I have two almost college students. They don't study harder. They might not make it to college, but you know, it's very important. There's two things. First off, it's very important that your voice be heard in terms of where you want to see your country go. It's yours. It's yours. We've had our shot. We're going to be handing it off as well we should. The environmental movement in general has always relied on young people. It's your self-interest. It's going to be yours. You should be determining what you want your communities and your country and your state and your local governments to prioritize. And I know from my own kids, even my son who says he wants to be an engineer, wants to do green tech, because he truly believes that's where the fun is, that's where the opportunity is. No matter what he does, he's going to see his role in it differently. Now, I have to also say, when I say green tech, that does not mean you cannot work in a traditional industry, whatever it might be, and not be working on green tech. You have to take the ethics of sustainability, of lower energy use, of lower carbon footprint, of a low carbon economy, all the things you're learning about why those are win-win-win solutions for you, for our planet, for our country, for our economy, and bring them wherever you go, wherever your first job is. I don't want to name an industry because then it'll seem like I'm being pejorative, but you can work anywhere in what might be considered a non-green industry and bring those values into that company. One of the biggest challenges we have is dealing with what I call old school thinking. Old school thinking is the environment is a box I need to check. It's going to cost me money. It's going to stop me from making more money. And gee, what a pain. It's just not that. In fact, if you think about sustainability and the larger issues of what your raw materials are, how you get them from waste because that's cheaper, what's going to happen to the waste that I make, and how much am I going to have to spend to get rid of that? What about energy? If you think about all those things up front, you're a very different CEO, and some of you will be that. That's what you can do. Take the values you're learning here, the things that drew you to this school and this campus, and bring them where you go next. Too often we all go to the thing where we feel comfortable. Go to the boardrooms and the jobs and the entry-level positions where you don't feel comfortable and bring those things in. I know things are going to change in that direction because I just know you are. because my kids wouldn't have it any other way. They're not going to be the kind of folks who go into entry-level jobs and go, well, you know, to heck with the environment, to heck with it. That's just not who you guys are, for the most part. Some of you might. I don't know you. What am I saying?
So here's a question from the audience. It reads, in what areas is the EPA succeeding on implementing CO2 reduction policies the most? And how has the endangerment finding helped combat climate change?
Well, everything we do, not everything, but the vast majority of what we do is being done under the existing authority of the United States Clean Air Act. A lot of that came into being in 1970 and then was updated in 1990. It hasn't been updated since, although the most recent attempts to update it might well be called rollbacks, right? That's what's happening just legislatively. So the endangerment finding, a finding of endangerment is a prerequisite to action on any pollution under the Clean Air Act. I am not a lawyer by training. But you can't, there's no pollution to be addressed if there's not a danger that's associated with it. All right? So finding that greenhouse gases endanger public health and welfare was a requirement in order to be able to use the authorities of the Clean Air Act to act on greenhouse gases, not just CO2, but greenhouse gases as a class. The first place, and many people still don't realize in this country, you hear about the horrible Armageddon that will come if EPA ever regulates greenhouse gases. We regulate it right now. We regulate greenhouse gas emissions from what we call mobile sources, vehicles. We regulate them from cars. The clean car standards are actually fuel economy standards. Those come from the Department of Transportation, married with greenhouse gas standards that were developed by EPA. That's why if you go to buy a new car, model year 2012 and beyond, I think model year 2013, excuse me, there's a new label. Instead of miles per gallon, it says miles per gallon equivalent, because you can meet the miles per gallon number through a different, everything from hybrid to more fuel efficient diesel to, there's no one winner, but we're also looking at CO2 equivalents. That label is also going to tell you how many grams per mile of CO2 equivalents are emitted by the vehicle you buy. It's a much smarter label. So we regulate it now. And it's had the opposite effect of Armageddon. That national standard, and it is one standard for the whole country, has allowed the industry to move forward with certainty. If you were a group of business folks, I would be saying, I know the one thing you want is you want certainty. You want to know what the rules of the road are, and you don't want them to change, so you can go out and innovate and do what you want to do. That's what the auto industry has in this country. That's why they're coming back from the brink and hiring again. Now we're moving to what we call stationary sources. Stationary sources, the largest emitter of greenhouse gases for things that don't move, are power plants, by far. So we've said we were going to attack this in logical order, and so we have and are working on the first ever rules for limiting the emissions of greenhouse gases from power plants. We will start with new power plants. Let's suppose you want to build a new power plant. What do you have to do to meet national standards for greenhouse gas? And then we're also going to be having some pretty robust discussion this year, followed up with regulations on the existing power fleet out there. Those will come out, the new standards will come out in the next month or so, and the existing ones will come out later in the year. So it all goes back to the endangerment finding. Is it still as good as an economy-wide program to address energy and climate that would have forced industry to sort of innovate its way to much lower carbon solutions, which is what the president came in working hard for? No. Are there other things we can do? Yes. Last night's announcement that the Department of Defense would build 1 gigawatt of renewables, huge, right? Because that's a market for all those technologies that are out there that folks are looking for a market to bring to commercial scale. But we'll continue to make those strides, and hopefully that, combined again with local and state leadership and moving forward on these issues, means that we're not losing the race, which is a time race to try to stop our growth in CO2 emissions and curb it, and eventually bend that curve to decreasing our CO2 emissions.
Administrator Jackson, I think you know what I'm about to say, which is that you're on a tight schedule and we just have a few more minutes, and I thought you might want to make a few comments and then we have to go to the next event.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm sorry.
I am too. I know.
Well, we can do some Q&A back and forth if that's good from the Facebook perspective too. You know, I don't know, maybe I want to do one or two more questions because I don't really have any other things impassioned to ask or say. Do you have a few more?
You know what? This
one good one that will help us wind down.
This will stretch us in a new area. As an aspiring clinical psychologist, so it's not just environmental people, I am interested in the connection between environmental issues and mental health concerns. Can you comment on this?
No. I thought that question, when you said psychology, I thought it was going in a different way because let me answer a question you didn't ask, which is increasingly, environmental protection is not someone else's job. It is all of our jobs. It is much harder to get people to think that way than to go, I'm out here, I'm the environmental cop on the beat, have no fear between Ted and EPA and Dennis, we got you covered. Go on, live your lives, life is good. We're actually at the point where how you choose to live your life is going to be extremely determinant about what kind of planet we have. Where you choose to live, what kind of automobile you choose to buy, where you eat, what you eat, all those determinations are extremely important. That's not to say, Bill Ruckelshaus always says that we've sort of like, you know, back in his day it was easy to advocate for environmental protection because you could literally see the pollution in the water, in the air. So many people think, well, they've got that covered. But now we're dealing with trying to make people understand how their habits might affect the Puget Sound, right, on a day-to-day basis, or how what you do right here might affect a child standing on a street corner in downtown Seattle waiting for a bus, those kind of issues. So it's a very different world. So psychologists and what I call sort of social sciences, I'm not sure if psychology is one of those, maybe it's not, I don't mean to insult, is very important. Getting us as Americans to think about what it means to be an American from the perspective of our natural and inherited environment is extremely important. And we are working to, wherever I go, a lot of times people of a certain generation will remind me of a commercial that came on in the 1970s. It was a Native American. Back then we called them Indians, but it was people called it the Crying Indian commercial. It was a moment of a Native American standing, looking at the wreck of the economy and crying for the loss of that resource. And I think what is needed is a little bit of re-emphasizing and redefinition, this is something you all have to do, of what the American value of the environment is in this day and age. And I think it's a very high-tech value. I think it's about monitoring, children as they go to school by putting something on their backpack instead of just what's coming out the stack, understanding what it means at the community level and ensuring social justice and inclusion. What was the original question? Whether we could.
You know what? I think you got there.
I don't know.
You did.
All right. So anyway, I would like to thank you all for coming. I would like to wish you all a wonderful, wonderful quarter or semester as you move through. I would like to also once again end where I hope I began, which is by saluting the institution, wonderful university, saluting your dean, who is formidable and who is ensuring that you get all those tools that we talked about today, the science, the technology, the policy, the law in thinking about these issues, and wishing you the very best. So thanks.